Hello and welcome to the Pinwheels pregame show. I'm Mitchell Kaminski. It is Wednesday, May 22nd, and Eloy Jimenez has been injured once again. We're going to get into that just a minute. As a reminder, this episode is sponsored by Homage. You can use the QR code in the top right there, take you to the website. Get yourself a nice Chicago sports shirt. They got a lot of selections there. They sell some of those at the Chicago Sports Depot as well, but you use that link. You can get it a little bit cheaper if you want a White Sox shirt, although the way they're playing right now, don't know why you would. So as we mentioned, Eloy Jimenez, it's big news of the week. He went down with yet another injury yesterday, left the game against Toronto in the seventh inning. They're calling it a soreness right now. They said he'd have to be evaluated. However, there was a report that came out this morning. The White Sox calling up Zach DeLoach, who we will talk about in just a second as well, which seems to indicate that given how many outfielders the White Sox already have on the roster, that he will be heading to the IL. And it's gotten to the point with Eloy Jimenez. Unfortunately, it's like, what do you do with him? Because you probably don't want to pick up that option given his production the last couple of years. The power's like seemingly deteriorated from what we saw his rookie year. I would have argued over the offseason would have been the best time to try and trade him, but I don't know how many suitors you'd have, especially given this injury history. And I think the White Sox, I know they're trying to trade him because Bob Nightingale came out and said that he is going to be available at the trade deadline. I think they're kind of punting on the future with Eloy, but you know, he has so many injury problems. There's not a whole lot of flexibility if you have him on your roster. He almost has to play DH, and he doesn't like playing DH. So, like, what do you do with him? I think that's why we saw him in right field, too, because I think the White Sox are trying to get it like, hey, you know, he can play outfield. He's still versatile. I think that's the reason they put him in the outfield earlier this week, just to try and show other teams that, like, hey, you know, he can do more than DH. But as we saw, he gets injured, running home on a single. So, you know, just chalk it up to another injury. A colleague at Sports Mockery, Shy Sox Mike, he had the list of injuries the White Sox have had. I'm just going to go through the list. And this is like, it's insane, like how many times this guy's had these soft, non-contact injuries where you can't trust him anymore. So he left on yesterday's game with a left hamstring strain. Earlier this year, he left with abductor soreness. He had to miss time for that. In 2023, he was removed from a game with left groin tightness. Earlier that season, in April, he was on the 10-day injured list with a left hamstring injury there. Then in 2022, he left with an elbow contusion, was day-to-day. He also had right leg soreness that season, had to miss some time. And he also left early in the year with a right hamstring soreness. That came 10 days, when he had the right hamstring soreness, that came 10 days after he had just left a game with ankle soreness. In 2021, he had to leave a game with knee soreness. He also suffered a ruptured left pectoral tendon that required surgery in spring training. I remember that one well. I remember exactly where I was when I got the notification, because at the time, it looked like the White Sox were going to have a good team that year, and Eloy was going to play a big part of it. He's coming off a big 2020 season where he just won the Silver Slugger, jumps on the rail trying to rob an uncatchable home run ball, tears his pectoral. And so just kind of been the story with him. Even his rookie year when he hit 31 homers, he had to miss time. I won't even bother going down the rest of the list. I mean, you get the idea. You've watched it. No one was surprised. It's gotten to the point where he goes down. No one's even surprised. I didn't see many people even upset because they don't care anymore. So now who are they adding? Now this call-up they made is interesting, and I like the move to call up Zach DeLoach. He was the White Sox currently 29th ranked prospect, I believe. If you're going by MLB Pipeline, they acquired him, if you remember, in that trade for Gregory Santos over the offseason with Prelander Baroa. So interesting prospect here. He's coming off a pretty good season in AAA Tacoma last year when they made that trade. Left-handed power bat. White Sox, if you look at the farm system, don't have a ton of positional players there. The pitching's really deep. Don't have a lot of power. They're dead last in the home runs right now, dead last in runs. So adding a left-handed bat, he hit 23 homers last year, 88 RBIs. And what I really liked about him, plate discipline, 83 walks. This year has not been as good. He's slashing 263, 358, 343 with 2 home runs, 18 RBIs, 19 walks, though. So still pretty good. So what can you expect from this guy? Now, as we mentioned, he does have very good plate discipline. He almost reminds me a little bit of a young Yoan Moncada in the fact that he likes to work counts. He likes to take a lot of pitches. That's why the walk rate is so high, which Moncada was very good at early in his career. However, what that led to really high strikeout numbers. He has struck out over 100 times in each of the last 3 seasons. This season, his strikeout rate, 26%. And I was reading a lot of scouts think it's because, similar to Moncada, if you remember him his rookie year, because he also had that problem where he struck out a lot early on, is because he would be taking these borderline pitches, and a lot of them get called for strikes. So when you're willing to work a count like him and you're willing to take some of these borderline pitches, oftentimes you're going to get rung up with 2 strikes. So that's one of the big things with him. It's got to cut down on that strikeout rate a little bit. But I do like this call-up. Give the guy a look, even though it's not overly impressive numbers. He's 25 years old. You know, I thought when they first traded for him, he'd have a shot to compete for the right field job in spring training. So you might as well give him a look. Now, this is where the problem kind of comes in, because the White Sox have dug themselves a hole, and I don't think they actually really have a plan. At least I haven't seen one, but how they're haphazardly acquiring all these outfielders and calling them up. Now, we said this last week when they made that trade for Corey Joltz. I think that Chris Getz, they're trying to add some depth to that farm system position player-wise. They're just kind of throwing shit at the wall, hoping that it sticks. But what was confusing about this call-up, and like I said, I agree with the move. I hope he gets some playing time this year. But you have a guy in Dominic Fletcher already who they had called up. And there's not really, the way that Pedro's managing the lineup right now, there's not a whole lot of space for guys like him to get consistent playing time. If you're going to call these kids up, you might as well give them an extended run of playing time to see what they can do. So this is what Pedro had said, and this was on Dominic Fletcher. Because if you notice, when he was called up, he did not have an at-bat yet. So they asked Pedro Grifol in Toronto, why isn't Dominic Fletcher playing? This was his response. I thought it was very bizarre. Pedro said, quote, Gavin is hitting third, Pham is hitting first, and Benny is a consistent pillar in our lineup. He'll come in for defense and do stuff. He has to wait for an opportunity and take advantage of it. This strikes me as Dominic Fletcher appears to be in Pedro Grifol's doghouse right now because he hasn't gotten any playing time. He's just kind of sitting there. And Dominic Fletcher, another one of these outfielders you acquired over the offseason, and they used one of their top 30 prospects to get him. Pretty good pitching prospect in White Sox. So it wasn't like a cheap price to go get Dominic Fletcher. You would think you'd like to see what he has. Now, in Pedro's defense, it's not like Fletcher's been good this year. This is what Fletcher's done right now. So he had his first plate appearance on Tuesday. Since being called up on May 15th, he walked, so it's not even an official at-bat yet. Now, this season, before that, he got sent down. As I mentioned, he wasn't hitting all that well. He was slashing 203, 277, 271 with 20 strikeouts and 59 at-bats. However, like I mentioned, you invested a lot in. So you might as well try and see what you got in a guy, give him a little bit of an extended run. So they sent him down to AAA Charlotte with those struggles, which, okay, you want to send him down. I was a little confused by it at the time because, like I said, this is a season about evaluating guys. Let him play 100 games, see what you have to truly evaluate him. Maybe they want to build his confidence up. Maybe they wanted to help improve the offense with Tommy Pham there. But in AAA, he wasn't hitting all that well. Like, he slashed this year in AAA Charlotte, 238, 319, 405. So it's not like he was tearing it up when the White Sox decided to call him back up. So if you're going to call him back up, at least in AAA Charlotte, he was getting consistent at-bats. Now with the White Sox, he's not getting any at-bats. So what are we doing here? You can't evaluate him. He's not getting consistent at-bats. He's not building his confidence down in AAA. It just seemed like a weird move to call him back up, and now you're already not playing Fletcher. So I figure when Eloy went down, at least now, hey, Fletcher, he can kind of Sheets, who was playing right field, which, you know, for a team that was talking about how they wanted to improve their defense all offseason, it's no wonder that it hasn't improved much when you got Gavin Sheets back in right field. But I get it. Sheets was one of your better hitters. You wanted to get him in the lineup. You can't play Eloy anywhere else. Sheets has to go to right field. Now with Eloy down, you shift Sheets to the DH spot, and you can keep Vaughn at first, although I would argue you could even move Vaughn out of the lineup a couple of days when Eloy was in there. But regardless, now there's a spot open up for Fletcher to get some consistent at-bats. But instead of letting him do that, they call up the Loach. So now it's going to be interesting to see how they balance his playing time, because if you go back to this quote, they want to keep Benintendi, and Tommy Pham in the lineup. Now, I get one to keep Tommy Pham in the lineup because he's a spark for the offense. This offense needs all the help they can get. Even when they were having that really good stretch where they were playing better baseball, they won 11 of 20 games in a recent stretch. During that stretch, they were averaging under 3 runs a game. A bulk of those wins were coming because they had some good pitching. So I get why you want Tommy Pham in the lineup every day to try and, you know, give them a spark. And you're also going to trade him at the deadline, so you're trying to show him off to other teams, get what you can. So I understand why he's still there. But Benintendi, now this guy's just blocking up a spot. For a pillar of the lineup, let's look at what Benintendi's done this year. That's a whole lot of blue on his baseball savant page. He's not putting the ball in play. He doesn't hit it very hard. The defense is horrible, and that's a lot of Yoan Moncada right now because like the body language sucks half the time. And I'm not saying he's like mailing it in, but it kind of looks like it's gotten to the point he's so frustrated he's just kind of complacent. He's out there just going through the motions. So now you bring it up to Loach. It's going to be interesting to see how the White Sox balance this playing time because you want to try and evaluate these guys and see what you got. But you got Benintendi, who you're putting in the lineup because he's a pillar of the lineup. But you're also paying him all this money, so I guess you have to play him. And then you got Pham center. So there's one outfield spot, and you got three guys in contention. The third guy is that Corey Julks who we were talking about, who's been really good for the Sox. Corey Julks is everything right now that Andrew Benintendi is. He's hitting the ball hard. He's hustling. He's robbing home runs. He's got 2 stolen bases, 4 for 13. Small sample size, but you can see Corey Julks. He's got that dog in him. He's a competitor. He got to the White Sox, and he's playing with, like, his hair on fire right now. You can tell he really wants to stay in the major leagues. Kind of a last shot for him, too, because, you know, with he is 27, I believe, at this point. So it's kind of like, hey, put up or shut up time for Julks. So I get that trade, but, like, why are we not giving Julks more playing time? So now you got Julks, Deloach, and Fletcher all up, and you can only play one of them under Pedro's logic, where we have to have Tommy Pham and Andrew Benintendi in the lineup every day. So how they manage this situation is going to be very interesting because it does, from the outside looking in, it doesn't really seem like they have a plan of how they want to manage these guys. So I hope Deloach gets some extended run, but I also hope Fletcher does too, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be possible given the way they're managing things. So typical White Sox, where, you know, there's not a whole lot of it doesn't look like there's a whole much of a plan there. So we shall see. Eloy, at this point, I'd just be happy if they can get anything of value for him so they can dump that contract because I don't see him picking up that option at the end of the year. And it's sad because he truly did have a lot of potential with the White Sox, but I think that has kind of run its course. Now, I've seen a lot of discourse this past week, some arguments on Twitter, just because the White Sox are going to sell. And one of the names they're going to sell, we talked about it last week, they could consider trading Luis Robert Jr., and they could also consider trading Garrett Crochet. Now, I made my point last week. I think those are 2 guys you want to build around. You have 2 pieces that can be here long-term when you're contending. Why are you going to try and trade them now, even if you could get a pretty good haul for them? At some point, even with a good farm system, you got to have some guys you can help supplement that farm system with and build around as consistent, like known commodities in the MLB. You have that with those 2. Now, another one that I thought was interesting, and I saw some people bringing up this point too, was why are we trying to trade Eric Fedde? The White Sox took a rare swing on one of these bargain bin pickups that actually worked out well. He's pitching not only like an all-star, he's a legitimate Cy Young candidate. Now, he did get roughed up against Toronto his last start. That kind of hurt the numbers, but leading into that start, he had some Cy Young caliber numbers. So I saw a lot of people saying the same thing with him. Like one argument I saw was, hey, like it's the same thing. Like we finally took a flyer on a guy that worked, who's cheap and affordable starting pitching. Why are we trying to trade him? Now, Fedde is different, I think, than Robert and Sheets, and the fact that his value is as high as it's going to be, and he only has 1 year on his contract. So as much as he is cheap and affordable, that's what's going to bring even more value given the way he's pitching, and he's only got 1 year left. Ask yourself, do you think the White Sox are going to be a contending team by next season? I would say no. I would think next season will probably be like the 2019 season if we're comparing rebuilds, which I'm about to do actually in a second. But if we're comparing rebuilds, I think it's kind of similar. Next year is going to be like 2019 season, a year before they're actually ready to contend. But you're going to see some of the prospects all kind of getting called up, getting their footing in the majors, pieces falling into place. Now that said, Fedde probably, after that season, when they're probably not expected to be 10, he's going to hit free agency. He will sign somewhere else for a big contract. The White Sox, historically, they don't like paying pitchers over $100 million. I'm not saying he's going to get $100 million, but he's probably going to have a pretty hefty price tag. So Fedde is one that I would try and trade now, get as much as you can, help restock that farm system. So let's go back to that farm system. I wanted to compare so later tonight, you probably might hear him talk about this too, but we were talking in our Pinwheels and Ivy group chat, and Matt, Father Zoe, brought up the point. He was like, which rebuild do you think is better, where they're at right now and where they were during that initial rebuild when they traded Chris Sale and Adam Eaton to get all those guys? So I was kind of looking through the prospect rankings just to kind of see. This is what the current farm system looks like right now. You can see the top 10 prospects here. Colson Montgomery, Noah Schultz, Thorpe, Carroll, all top 100 prospects. Ramos, we saw what he can do, kind of tearing it up right now. So they got some good pieces here. But now, if you go through the rest of the top 30, outside of Montgomery, Carroll, Ramos, Zavala, I think the jury's still out on him and Gonzalez since they're both still pretty young. But it's a very deep. I think this time around, the pitching in the farm system a lot deeper than last time. They got a lot of good arms. Now the difference is, if you kind of look at 2017 when you're comparing the two. As good as the farm system is now, I would argue, I think the last time the difference was, and this is 2018, you kind of look at the top 10 they had here, a lot more high pedigree prospects. It was a lot more top heavy in 2017-18 because you had a top 100 guy, Moncada, who was once considered the best prospect in baseball. Giolito was once considered a top pitching prospect. Kopech was a top 100 prospect. Lopez was a top 100 prospect. Fulmer was a first-round pick. Zach Collins was a first-round pick. Zach Birdie, first-round pick. Dane Dunning led all the minor leagues in strikeouts. So a lot of pretty high pedigree guys where you kind of go to what they got right now. And there's a couple top 100 guys in there, but then it's a whole lot of, well, let's wait and see where upside. So I think the farm system deeper now than it was 2017, 2018. Not necessarily better, though, because they had the high pedigree prospect. That's just how I see it playing out right now. So that's why you even supplement that even further. You can never have too good of a farm system. You never see any of these, like all these teams, you look at the teams that have been winning the World Series the last couple of years, they all have good farm system. You need to have a good farm system. You can never have too many prospects, and that's the big thing the White Sox have struggled with in recent years, and you see why these injuries affect them so much. The depth just not really it's just not really there. So we'll see how that all plays out. I hope Deloach gets an extended run. I really want him. I want him to be good. So we shall see. And hopefully Ramos gets back sooner rather than later as well. But it's tough watching the White Sox these days. This offense is brutal. It's brutal. Like the pitching for them has been very, very good. Because as I mentioned, even with that win streak, like it was the pitching holding down the fort. And they were playing better defense, but they rank last in runs, last in home runs. I've been to 5 games in person this season. They've been shut out in 3 of those 5. They have not hit a home run in any of them. And I should act surprised, like it'd be bad luck, but it's just kind of how the White Sox are at this point. And the most frustrating part is we knew the offense wasn't going to be good heading into the year, but when you hear them saying our goal is to improve the defense, and you are near the bottom of the league in almost every defensive metric, that's a problem. So, I mean, for those of you that are still sticking with the team and watching them on a consistent basis at this point, I salute you because it's not a whole lot of positives right now. But, plugging along. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, Andy in the chat says, the one plus this season, he's not planning his day around viewing games. I actually agree. It is kind of nice to just casually watch them. They finally stole the win yesterday, which was nice to see. Kopech throwing gas, man. He looks good out of the bullpen. I wouldn't be surprised he gets a nice little return at the trade deadline as well. But that's about all I have for you today. Not as much as we usually have. A little bit of a slower week in White Sox land because a lot of losses right now. But we will see how that whole outfield shuffle plays out because you got a lot of outfielders that you're trying to evaluate, but you can't because you're stuck with Andrew Benintendi, and that's a conundrum too. I mean, that 70, everyone jokes like highest paid player in the major leagues. At the time of that deal, which I didn't think was a slam dunk, but like $75 million was like reasonable for the amount of years they've given him. But he has just fallen off. He's not even a serviceable player. He's one of the worst hitters in baseball right now. And his defense, he's considered a gold glove outfielder. That's gone to shit too. And I think the defense is a little bit overrated because a lot of that was because when he won that gold glove, he was playing at Fenway. So you don't have to have as much range in Fenway Park. You just kind of have to know how to play it off Green Monster, which is difficult. You do have to know your angles. So not saying he's like a scrub, but right now it's just, we'll go back to, look at his defensive. We'll go back to Benintendi's Baseball Savant. Overshot it. Benintendi's Baseball Savant page. Like, look at the fielding right here. The range, he's got a -4 outs above average. The arm value, -2. Every third base coach that has an opportunity to run on Benintendi does. And the RSA, it's ugly all around. At least his sweet spot percentage is high, and he doesn't whiff a whole lot. The problem is when he does put it in play, it's not going very well. So far or hitting it hard. It's an issue. He really is a roadblock. They got to find a way to get him out. I mean, they got to find a way to get him out of the lineup. At some point, you just got to eat that money because he's not doing anyone any good by being in there. They got to figure something out with him. But, White Sox, a lot more questions than answers at this point. We will see. Appreciate you hopping on. Reminder, main Pinwheels and Ivy show will be tonight at 8 o'clock. Father Zoe will be back. A lot of stuff going on in Cubs land right now, too. Kyle Hendricks removed from the bullpen, or removed from the starting rotation to the bullpen. Now, my theory is they're going to keep him in that bullpen just until he gets his 10 years of service, and then they cut ties with him. I don't think he lasts the rest of the year on the White Sox roster. But all of you that hopped on, thank you for joining us on your lunch break. Make sure you tune in tonight, 8 o'clock, for the Pinwheels main show. And scan that QR code. You want a cool t-shirt to take into the weekend. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your week.